I wanted to follow up on the last two videos that I did regarding breaking the codes in those events, and follow up on a couple of comments that were left on those videos. One was regarding the Bristol riots, which is tied to the Sarah Everard case, and this Suez Canal cargo ship that is stuck in the canal called the Evergreen, which is also Evergreen. And these are all coded events, but this Evergreen or Evergiven cargo ship was a little difficult to figure out. Now, whenever I see these shipping containers, I automatically connect it to the analogy of cryptocurrency, simply because they use this as an analogy to explain how cryptocurrency is the shipping container that runs on the rails, which is like the train, and the rails being the actual ledger that the cryptocurrency operates on. So they usually use that as an analogy. Now, this is to do with the cryptocurrency, absolutely, but it is also to do with supply chain management. And so it is very similar to the 100-car pileup event, but it's also very similar to the shooting in some of its messaging. Again, this Evergreen, the word ever comes up a couple of times. You got Evergreen, Evergiven, and Sarah Everard. And to be honest, I can't figure out what the code is on that. So if anybody has any ideas as to what that stands for or represents, please leave it in the comments. But Evergreen, in Freemasonry, the Evergreen is an emblem of enduring faith and immortality of the soul. Okay, so going back to this shipping container, I'm going to play you some clips here. You'll be really interested. The first phrase out of this woman's mouth.
Suez Canal remains blocked by a grounded ship.
Yeah, and the ripples are really being felt across the globe.
The ripples are being felt around the world? First thing she says, ripples.
The MV Evergiven is one of the biggest container ships in the world. It ran aground in the Suez Canal early on Tuesday morning after strong winds and a dust storm blew it off course. Now, we've got some satellite images which show just how the position of this huge ship is really blocking other boats from passing through there. Vessels are being held up on both sides of the canal as tugboats work to free it. The Suez Canal is a hugely strategic waterway which drastically cuts travel time between Europe and Asia. Otherwise, ships have to sail around South Africa. More than 10% of global trade passes through it each year. That's about $1 trillion worth. Even once the passage is cleared, analysts say the traffic could be disrupted for days.
It shows you how fragile the global supply chains can be at times. And as we rely on shipping to deliver all that medical equipment, the fuel, the food, the other supplies, this is quite a critical moment.
He's talking about the fragility of the supply chain. Now, I don't for 1 minute think that this is an accident. I think it's deliberate, and they're orchestrating this situation so that the supply chain fails and we are forced into increased cost of living. Oil and gas prices have already increased, and it hasn't even, it's been like 2 days. This fragility in the supply chain is basically designed to point to the problems in our existing system. Now, the fact that the ship is called, the words that you see is Evergreen. For me, Evergreen immediately connects to carbon emissions plan to reduce to carbon zero, and water represents the currency, the flow of money, and so this is blocking the flow. This is blocking the flow of money and products and everything, and they're saying that it's the energy that's causing the problem. They also said that this ship lost power, and that's why it's stuck. And it's stuck between two banks being, financial institutions. And so this Evergreen ship is preventing the flow of the currencies and it is stuck between two banks, and they're trying to free it. So they're trying to free up the currency from the banks that is on-demand liquidity, and that is what Ripple does, which is why the lady at the very beginning said ripple effects. So it's twofold. Again, we're talking about the on-demand liquidity for the financial institutions, freeing up the Nostro Vostro accounts of the money that's locked into the banks. XRP does this. And also we're talking about the supply chain management system, which is what VeChain does. And there are other systems that take care of supply chain. It's not just VeChain, but VeChain is a major player in the supply chain management system.
So how serious then is the disruption from this, Stephen?
Potentially could be quite a lot. This is a major shipping route for goods travelling between Asia and Europe. It could be days before the ship is freed. Previous blockages have been wrapped up a little bit more quickly, but the size of this ship is going to make it quite difficult to move.
I wanted to point out that this footage they were using was from January 2020. It's up in the corner here, January 2020. So this is not live footage.
Bank to bank, blocking one of the world's most important shipping lanes. The 400-metre-long Evergreen got stuck on Tuesday morning, running aground in high winds, reportedly after a power failure on board. A fleet of tugboats has been trying to refloat the mega ship ever since.
All right, so a couple of things come to mind when I'm listening to this is that they are stuck bank to bank. This is the world's biggest cargo ship, which calls to mind Titanic. And in the very beginning of this, the lockdown and everything, there's a lot of Titanic references, and Titanic is also connected to bankers because the bankers allegedly went down with the ship.
As tankers queued, oil prices rose. The blockage another blow to global trade, disrupted by COVID.
Once you're in the canal, it's relatively straightforward. It's a bit like going through a tunnel, perhaps, but the entrance and the exit are the problems.
So you can go around, the coast of South Africa. That adds about a week. And the question I think people have been figuring out is, what does that do for fueling costs? Because it's obviously longer. And that's part of the reason why people use the Suez Canal, because it's quicker and cheaper in cost terms, apart from the cost of actually transiting the canal itself.
The people use the Suez Canal because it's cheaper and quicker, which is why people want to use XRP, because it is cheaper and quicker, and Ripple as well is cheaper and quicker. So moving on to Sarah Everard. Now, she disappeared March 3rd, 2021, which would be 3-3, and she is 33 years old, another 3-3. She's a marketing executive, again, another reference to markets, as in the economy, and she disappeared in South London, another reference to South. Now, the supermarket where the shooting was, the one man pointed out that he was in the South Side, and so it's very interesting. I'm not really sure what this reference is to South, but it keeps popping up. And so she was living in London's Brixton Hill area, and she went missing after leaving a house near Clapham Common, which is CC 33. The story goes that she was found dead, and that allegedly a cop is at fault for her abduction and subsequent death. As a result, there's been some protests about her death in the UK, mostly against the police. Now, this is very similar to what had happened in France, where there was an event where a black man was beat up by the police And he didn't die, I don't think. I think he was just beat up. Miraculously caught it on tape, and then a few weeks later, they were trying to pass a bill. You're not allowed to photograph the police officers or video the police officers and expose them on social media. And so French people rioted. All of this was orchestrated, by the way. So was this. And don't get me wrong, regular, normal people get caught up in it, so they do participate, but it is all planned and orchestrated. And so with this Sarah Everard case, there was a riot in Bristol against the police, and they're calling it the Kill the Bill demo, which is Kill Bill, which I'm sure there's some hidden meaning behind Kill Bill. Okay, so this riot, they had a bunch of people, they say 130 people, protesting this bill. And basically the bill in the UK are the police. People call them the bill. So they want to basically kill the police and put an end to the police, which is, part of the agenda of the blockchain to get people to police themselves. You've got the police protest, which is PP, which is 33, but it's also an upside down B, so it's a BB, which is a 22, and it's also, could look like a double 6. It says here, following medical assessment on 2 officers taken to hospital at the weekend, neither suffered broken bones. However, here, this police officer has something different to say.
There's an injured stamped on, I believe, and another officer with broken bones. Fortunately, all of our people are out of hospital now, I'm very pleased to say, but it was a terrifying scene.
Okay, so he says that a police officer had a collapsed lung and another had broken bones. And then the previous article said no broken bones. Broken bones, again, is BB, where you're 22 or you're 33 for your double letter. Any double letter is a 33. But also B is the second letter of the alphabet, which makes it 22. And again, the 22 keeps showing up. So there's 20 injured in Bristol. It's another 2-2. And a collapsed lung, you've got 2 lungs, so 2 into 1 is another code. So I can't breathe is another code. And so if your lung is collapsed, you can't breathe. Collapse, just referencing, the collapse of the economy. When I'm talking about the collapse of the economy, this doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to even notice. It's possible it could go either way. It could go where everybody notices, people panic, and there's a rush on the banks. It could be really ugly. It could also go where they do it quietly under the radar, and they come out as heroes and saying, well, we saved the day with these digital currencies and we avoided a total economic collapse, and so we're all on the right track here and everything's going to be good. And you're none the wiser of the fact that the economy actually did collapse. You just didn't notice it because they kept printing money and propping it up artificially, which is why we are in a bubble. So that bubble is about to burst whether you see it or not. So broken bones, now 3/22, which is March 22nd, which is the day that this riot happened, is also the skull and bones number. Skull and bones being the Cairo, the bones part being the X, the cross, and also the spine, and the head or the skull being the Rho, which is the head in heaven and earth, and also the phoenix. And so if the bones are crushed, that to me signifies the end of the duality system. But also it was the bones of a police officer, police representing the pole ice or the red and the blue of the polarity, and that is also the end of the duality system. So personally, what I think that this, aside from the agenda of getting rid of the police, which is the obvious agenda, the subtext on this is about the collapse of the duality system and the end of the the chess game, or the black and white, the red and the blue.